This is Short-Term Rental Management, the show that is all about short-term rental property management with your host, yours truly, Luke Carl.
Did you know that we're officially back in a buyer's market? That's right. Even though interest rates continue to rise, they are causing prices to fall. So there's finally room for you to do regular real estate investor things that we couldn't do for so long, like negotiate, make lower offers, ask for sellers to cover some of your closing costs. So it's a really great time to buy in terms of being able to get a lower purchase price and being able to negotiate. So if you're looking for your first or next short-term rental, it's a perfect time to reach out to us at the Short Term Shop. Let our team of agents in any of our true vacation market destinations help you find the perfect investment. Jump on over to theshorttermshop.com and click Get Connected to get started. We are brokered by eXp Realty. See y'all over there.
Here we go. Here he is, best looking guy in real estate. We have arrived. We're doing it. We're getting it done. And buddy of mine, Tim, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. We were just shooting the breeze, and I'm like, well, we should just recorded all that.
It's a beautiful day up here in the Smokies. It's
been on 38.
It's been a little rainy, but the last couple days have been absolutely gorgeous, perfect weather. So,
yep, it's getting to be that time of year.
Yes, the time when bookings start coming.
Yes, I've got them coming in too. I just had a $250 a night on a one bedroom. And that it blew my mind a little bit. And
I don't hate that.
No, and I was like, well, and it was like 4 months from now, so I'm like, I should probably raise that rate, but that seems crazy to me because when I first started, that was, that no way that would happen.
$99 back then.
Yeah, dude, for real. It was like $99 special. Like that was your headline. So anyway, yeah. So today we're going to talk about data. How do I analyze? How do I know what's going to make money? And a lot on the subject of, is there too much data? Because I think that there is. But before we get to that, give us a little rundown of your real estate career. What do you own? Where are you from? What do you do? And who do you know?
Who do I know? Luke Carl. What else needs to be known there? I met Luke Carl in the process of this. Currently live in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. I'm actually an agent here now as well. That is something I've added to the resume, if you will, over the last couple of years. But started off doing long-term rentals in Kentucky when I lived there, and still have a portfolio of long-term rentals in Kentucky, and have one in Texas that's kind of an oddball. But then 4 short-term rentals in the Smokies and a couple in Gulf Shores. And
okay, so you're in 4 markets?
4 markets.
2 short-term and 2 long-term markets?
Correct. And
that Texas market, will you continue to buy there? Or what's the deal with that one?
Probably not. That was a pre-owned house that just got shifted to a long-term rental. So I'm not gonna say no. It's a possibility, but not really looking to. That was just something that I'll say we had, and it kind of turned. It went from it used to be my wife's house, so it went from her house to a long-term rental. So
she lived in.
Yeah. So,
okay. Any issues with that? Do you self-manage that thing from Tennessee to Texas?
We do. And no, it's been pretty easy. To be honest, we self-manage all of our portfolio right now, which, again, long-term's not probably what we're going to do on the long-term rentals. But for right now, the size we are, it's manageable. We actually, kind of learned self-management on the long-terms first, and then we bought short terms and learn to self-manage through you, quite frankly. And but the experience that we had with the long term certainly didn't hurt. And then opportunities arose, and we ended up moving away from, we self-managed those long terms, but we also lived pretty local to most of them. And but now that shifted, so now we live closer to most of our short-term rentals, but we live a distance from our long terms. So we've kind of learned it's the same principles, just a little different. They're 2 different businesses. So anyway, the answer is long-term, we're probably going to bring property management into the picture on the long-term rentals, just because we want to scale it. And it's not super scalable, much bigger than, in my opinion, much bigger than where we are for that. So,
yeah, I did the same. I started with long-term. I had one long-term, and it was local to me at the time. And then I started buying in the Smokies, which were also fairly local. They were a couple hours down the road. And then I started after I think five short terms, I went back to long term. Started buying a bunch of those. Well, it's a bunch. I mean, as many as my broke ass could get my hands on. Duplexes in Chattanooga at the time, which is a great town. Also in Tennessee. All my stuff was in Tennessee, but in 3 areas. And then I branched out, moved to Florida, and it just kind of went from there. But that's, I think, was one of the reasons we get along so well is, you know, well, you're good looking, but also the long-term thing. I mean, most of the people that flowed through my life as far as real estate is concerned are, I don't want to say anti-long-term, but they just don't even really think about it. Like, it doesn't even cross their mind. And they're all gung-ho on this short-term thing. And I really don't know why that is.
I mean, they both have it. I mean, I think the short terms, there's no arguing that, per house, the cash flow is better, but I don't know. There's some beauty in long term that I love my long terms. They're two completely separate businesses, and you got to treat them as such. You can't treat them the same. But I love them both. Now, with that said, I intend in my life to have way more long terms than I do short terms because, I mean, part of the short term attraction for me is it's fun. It's you get to be a little more creative, and you get to do more stuff and be more interactive with them, and you're creating vacations for people, which is all fun and exciting and pretty and sexy stuff, but at the same time it's more work. So I think there's a limit on how many short terms you can manage yourself. I mean, I think you get to a point and it's like you're not doing a great job if you have too many of them. And you don't need too many, really. I mean, so that's kind of our goal, is to have an amount of short-term rentals that we still are having fun every day running it, and then build our long-term into more of the empire, if you will. That is, a little bit less hands-on, but still, obviously you're still involved.
So yeah, that's exactly what I've done. And I've got the 8 short terms, and every now and then I think, man, maybe it's time for another one, because it is slow going. It's not really, I can't really find an apartment building right now that's looking like something I would want. And to buy a whole bunch of single families is a lot of work and time consuming. And then each one of those only makes, $200-300 a month. So then it's like, man, what is it to buy 50 grand out of your pocket, 20% down, for once you get paint and floors, 50 grand, and to make $300 a month, it's not sexy. It is not sexy. And then you spend all this time and money fixing it up, and nobody cares, but with a short term, you're picking out furniture, you're picking out paint colors, you're picking out, granite. Oh, we were just talking about that. Yeah. And I'm going to shiplap this room, and I'm going to do this tile in this shower. And then I'm going to get $1,000 photos taken and in a video, and I'm going to put it on,
coffee stations, man. Coffee stations.
In the coffee station. Yeah, man. It's crazy. So, and then you can show it to you, text the link to your friends and say, look at this. This is so sexy. And then they're like, oh yeah. Can I stay there for free? So then you're like, wait, why did I even send this? That was a bad idea. But yeah, it's just a whole different thing. I don't know that it's two separate brains, because, I feel like I really did learn a lot about short term with my long terms, and especially with managing, because I was self-managing my long terms when I first first several months or years. I think I had 18, 20 doors in long term, most of which were duplexes, before I hired a third-party property manager. And I did that because I moved, and it just was perfect timing. How do you know when to do that? For me, it just happened. I moved. I was getting to the point where I was ready to just keep buying, and it was going to be probably in a different town because I moved. I do like my long terms to be 2 or 3 hours from where I live, if possible, which is not always possible, but that way I can buy 2 or 3 at a time if I'm lucky, and I've saved my pennies and done all my hard work, and then I can go look at them, get the rehabs going, and I like to do that. With short terms, it almost doesn't matter where they are, but
right. I think another big thing that I'm pretty certain you and I agree on this, the mindset, the similarity in mindset in both of these is like, how are we making the world better? And the difference is, on a long-term rental, we're making a home for somebody, and that's an awesome thing. But then same thing with short-term rentals is we're making a memorable vacation that, somebody's going to have lifelong memories of going to one of our places, and hopefully, that's the goal. And spending quality time and doing all that. So that's been a big part of how my wife and I have approached it, is just trying to, do this. We're trying to serve people in the same stroke of adding to what we do in our life.
Well, I love the way you put that, and you're right. We're making the world a better place and providing a awesome home for people to either vacation or live in, and then you get an eviction, and then you're like, oh man,
Yeah,
that goes right out the window.
Yeah, or a mad short-term guest. I mean, it both. They both hurt. Because just like you said, we put a lot of time and effort and work and thought and planning into trying to make these things as good as possible. And at the end of the day, some people don't care. But you gotta look past that and be able to move on from that.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So how do I decide? I mean, without overstating the obvious here, how do I decide how much one of these things is going to make? Let's say I'm new, I'm scared. This is probably the most common question we get all the time. How do I analyze a deal? How do I know it's going to make money? What's your process there? And do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think this is going to sound extreme, but you got to become an expert. And the data word gets thrown around a lot, and the reality is, different personality types and different people need different amounts of data to satisfy their brain. As an investor, you have to learn to stretch that kind of both ways. Sometimes up, sometimes down. Some people, if the wind blows right, they're satisfied and they'll pull the trigger. That can be dangerous, but other people can go on the other extreme and run 15 different spreadsheets and use 15 different data sources and still not make a decision. So kind of get into a happy medium. You got to become an expert, and whatever that takes for you is a little bit different, but and there's all kinds of different words and terms that are used. But at the end of the day, to me, data, you have to use some critical thinking of your own to sort through whatever data set it is you're using. There's all kinds of data available to our fingertips right now. But at the end of the day, you have to, become an expert in that market. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to, make you successful. And becoming an expert can mean a lot of different things. You gotta get to where you're confident that you can possibly do better than the next person. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of rambling on there. You want to talk about my method? I mean, people, I come from cars and motorcycles, that a little bit. I've bought lots of that stuff in my life, and people ask me all the time, what's this bike worth, or what's this car worth? And it's not like, how do I have a magic answer? It's from going out and being immersed in that. I'm immersed in it, and I'm on Facebook groups, I'm in forums, I'm on marketplaces, I'm on Craigslist back in the day. With real estate, it's the same thing. You got to get immersed in the market that you're looking at, and so a guy I know came up with a term called the enemy method. That's pretty much the same thing.
I love me some Craigslist though, man.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. It's digging in and finding out what your enemies are doing. I mean, it's finding out what your competition is doing. Because that's what supports the market, is what people are willing to pay. And so you got to get in, and some people, you can go out and look at, if we're talking about short terms, you can go in. The enemy method is really going out and looking at Airbnb, Verbo. You can even get into some property manager stuff, but to me, that's kind of a little bit dangerous, because a lot of times, self-managing, you can do better job than a property manager is. So you don't want to look solely at their numbers. It's not a bad data point, but it's not anything I'm going to base a decision off of necessarily. But then also, I mean, the Facebook groups that are out there these days are, have a lot of data in them as well. And then from there, there's I'll say the Air DNA type places, and I certainly look at that stuff. But again, that's something I think it can get overdone. You got to be careful with that data, because there's a lot of variables to data, and you have to be able to look at it, deep enough or shallow enough to understand, what you're getting into there. So
let's talk about the property manager thing. So this is how I've always done it. If I find an enemy, if I'm on Verbo or Airbnb, to me, a property manager on Airbnb is probably just some kind of clickbait. Like in my experience, in my markets, they don't really want bookings from Airbnb for whatever reason. Yes, there will be some of them on there, but they're really just trying to get you to see their brand name in the profile, and then go to their website and click 100%. It So their prices are like through the roof, and you can't even get a good idea of what the property is doing. Verbo, a little less of that, but it's still the same thing because Verbo has been around for so long, and property managers tend to be a little bit more traditional. They are a little bit, more receptive, in my opinion, to Verbo. So if I see a property manager while I'm enemy methoding, if I'm on Verbo, I'll go ahead and take a look. I will. I'll see, okay, what's doing here? Do they actually have any reviews? That's another thing. If you find a property on Verbo that is a third-party property manager, and it's always pretty easy to tell. You can, if they're being obvious, they have their brand name.
Right.
That being said, I have a brand name. I have a property management company name on mine, although it is a boutique that I actually own these properties. So it's a little bit deceiving at times. Or you can click on their profile and see if they own 47, if they have 47 properties on there, or 120 properties, or anything more than like 7, really.
Right.
Then they're probably some sort of manager or co-host, and they don't actually own them, and it's a whole different ballgame. Doesn't mean you shouldn't look at the data. Doesn't mean you shouldn't enemy method them. I will generally rule something out on Airbnb if it looks third-partied. I'm not interested because they are probably not actually doing that. It's not their wheelhouse. Another thing about property managers is if I'm looking to buy a property and I'm enemy methoding that property, and I happen to find that property on Airbnb and or Verbo, then it's managed by a property manager, or I know that it's managed by a property manager just for whatever reason, the seller told me, or the seller's agent or something. Then I will go to that property manager's website to basically stalk this property I'm interested in, see what they're doing with it. The property management website will have rates on there. They're usually about, the same for a month at a time. And you can kind of get an idea. You can even call the front desk. Hey, do you know anything about this property? I would like to stay there. Pretend like you're going to stay there. And that's some heavy duty enemy methoding. If you want to get in the weeds, especially if it's a property you're under contract on, very interested in, it's probably pretty good. It's a pretty good idea to get somewhat obsessed with that. Now, you do need to be careful. You can very easily make a property manager mad, or get too obsessed and then make your agent or the seller's agent mad because you cross the line. Right. You're an agent. Talk to me about that. Can a buyer cross the line with a property manager on a property?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to get in too deep where you're getting intrusive to what could have an effect on the deal. I mean, if they start calling the seller and saying, look, we're having problems with these people, you don't want to even get near that, really. So you got to be careful with it, but within reason. Honestly, by the time I'm under contract, for me, that work is usually already pretty much done. And the reason for that is, kind of going back to becoming an expert in your area. Even if you haven't bought there yet, you can become somewhat of an expert. At the end of the day, if you're looking at similar properties in a similar area, they all have the same rent potential. And that comes down to the rent potential is different than the rent history. At the end of the day, rent history, who cares to some extent, because that's measuring how the person before you did, whether that's a property manager or a self-manager, you're looking at how did they do, which again, you can look at that, but at the end of the day, you need to know what do you think you can do with that. So if you're looking at a 2-2 versus another 2-2 that's right down the street, they should really have the same rent potential, I mean, of what you're going to do with that property long term. And that's the number I use, so if I'm looking at, houses in a whatever price range, I'm not like enemy methoding every single one of them if they're in the same general area. I go in, I did that work ahead of time, and I use pretty much the same rent number, with it. There might be some, if one's got a view, one doesn't, you can call it an adder, or whatever, and put some money on it, but for the most part, I'm doing a lot of that ahead of time. So I don't really go down the path of, individual property digging too far.
Yeah. So same thing, same for me, man. And to me, I think people are overthinking it a lot, like it's too much. But I'm not ready to get into that yet. What really all I do.
At the end of the day, the property is a tool for you to make money. So you got to know what that tool is capable of. And I guess that kind of just rolls back into what I said. The tool is capable of so much. Period. And if you have a 2-bedroom, you're not going to bring in 120 grand a year, no matter how hard you try. I got to be careful saying that. It's 2023. That if somebody watches this 5 years from now, that might be different. But you just got to know what your tools are capable of. And I agree. It gets overthought a lot. And people, if you're analyzing every single property, like trying to figure out the income potential, I think that's going a little deep. So,
well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a single family home, right? But I also understand that if you're new, it's just as overwhelming as a 100-unit apartment building,
right.
which quite frankly is really not that difficult math either. You just take the rents, compare it to the purchase price, and you figure out your cap rate, and then you figure out what your interest rate's going to be, and you just sit down and do some math, and you figure out what it's going to make. And I remember when I first started in apartments, it was scary as hell. I was calling everybody I could find. I was calling everybody and saying, hey, how do I figure out, what this thing's going to make? I'm just trying to compare it to a single family long-term with the 1% rule and all that. And I'll be honest, at the end of the day, that is a pretty good way to do apartments, for what I do, like 20, 30 units. If you're buying a house or an apartment for 80 grand a door, it needs to rent for $800 a month, and then obviously you're going to sit down and do a whole lot more research, and insurance and taxes are a huge factor there, especially in my market, because taxes are really high in my apartment market. But it's the same thing with, it's not even, it's less complicated. This is a one front door home. There's expenses, there's income, you compare the two, and that's it. And I think what happens is people drive themselves absolutely freaking insane with it. And I do think a lot of that has to do with where we are right now. This space has exploded. You got 16 different websites out there now that are set up to tell you how much it's going to make, which really all they're doing is putting the enemy method in a bottle. Maybe I should have done that. And it's great. They're great. It's just like in long-term single family, you got rentometer. To me, that's the only one. That's the only one I'm aware of, and it's pretty decent. And what is it doing? It's scraping Zillow, saying, this is what these are renting for. And it's pretty accurate, although it can be very not accurate. It's in some cases if you're not comparing apples to apples. So you have to really kind of dig deep and make sure. You got to go on Zillow. You got to go on Zillow and cross-reference and basically check the story on rentometer.
Absolutely.
And make sure that it's telling you the right story, because if you just take its word for it, it's not going to be right.
Yeah. And that stuff comes right back down to being an expert in your market. On our long-term rental, this, you get on the wrong side of the tracks per se, and your rental meter may be scraping a few properties that are on the right side of the tracks, or vice versa, so you gotta know your area a little bit. And that the same thing rolls into short term. Some of these, data scraping things kind of do the same thing. If they're scraping, the 5 properties within a quarter mile of yours that are short-term rentals, and, all 5 of them are with a property manager and may have skewed data on Airbnb because of it, it could give you a drastically inaccurate number, and self-managers too. I get asked a lot, like, is it self-managed or property managed? And they kind of put it into buckets like that. But just because it's self-managed doesn't mean it's self-managed well. And if it's self-managed at a rock star level, you got to be real with yourself. Am I going to be able to duplicate that in my first year? So that can go both ways too. So it all comes down to, numbers at the end of the day. You got to know what you're looking for and what's your worst case scenario. And, look at that a little bit. I don't ever want to shoot for, I'm not a worst case scenario kind of guy generally, but I know what that number is that I got to make every year to make it work. So
it's interesting that you hear that from, I would assume what you're saying as clients is that they're conscious of whether it's self-managed or property managed. And it really, why would I personally, I wouldn't give a flying crap. I can sit there and figure out what I can make on this thing in 10 minutes. I guess what you're saying is that they're interested in the historical data on the property.
Yeah, they're looking at the historical data, and there's a preconceived notion that if it's self-managed, that those numbers are already going to be better. So they're
closer to what they could do.
Right. And that's just not always necessarily true. This we've said it before. This business isn't for everyone, and not everybody self-manages the same way we do. So that's almost as wide of a thing as anything else. Is you gotta really get real on what do you think you can do yourself, and you got to get confident in that. And then once you buy the property, you got to set some goals and you got to go after it, because once you've made that commitment, you're in. And there's nothing wrong with that. People that set goals and set numbers generally exceed them, because you get obsessed with it. So
this episode is brought to you by the premier short-term rental Facebook group, Short-Term Rental Long-Term Wealth. We have nearly 50,000 members. This is the biggest independently owned and operated SCR Facebook group, and it has been curated by yours truly, Cashflow Carl. Join us on Facebook. Search the groups for Short-Term Rental Long-Term Wealth. That's Short-Term Rental Long-Term Wealth on Facebook. But wait a minute. To me, even sitting there thinking about whether it was self-managed or property managed, I don't even care. Like, I just don't care. You need to be able to go in there and say, this is what I can do with this. To me, a 2-bedroom is a 2-bedroom is a 2-bedroom is a 2-bedroom. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's like, oh, I ran the numbers on this deal and it doesn't make sense. So I got to go run the numbers on this other deal over here that's right down the street in the exact same square footage. Dude, it's the same numbers,
Agreed.
Obviously there's differences in decor and furniture and paint and how, with a short term, if they can touch it, it has to be nice. So if you've got 15-year-old appliances, that house is not going to do as well as the house with the new appliances. So you're looking at, $2,000-3,000 or whatever it is for a set of appliances these days, $5,000, $27,000. I don't know. You figure out what that number is. I'll probably spend $2,000 on just the fridge in a short term, maybe $1,500 on a fridge, $800 on a dishwasher, and probably $900 a piece on a washer and dryer.
Yep, and about $1,000 on your stove, $900 to $1,000.
You're not getting the bottom of the barrel stuff. You're getting nice stuff. So whatever that math is, $2,000 on the washer, dryer, probably $4,000, $5,000 on a set, maybe five and a half if you want the microwave. Now we're just going crazy, but and then the espresso machine, but but other than that, okay, so let's factor that in, I guess. But does that even really count? Does CapEx count? No, now we're splitting hairs, for me. And just because the house has a brand new washer and dryer doesn't mean it's the one I'd put in there. So it might be worthless even if it is new, so there's like all these factors that go into it. And I can see where folks can drive themselves nuts with this stuff. But my problem with it now is that there's so many of these data websites that just like, man, it's at the end of the day, just step back and sit there with the yellow pad. For me, that's what it's all about. Back to basics, sit there at the yellow pad. You got to believe in yourself. If you can't figure out how much money this property is going to make on your own, how are you going to manage this thing? I mean, there's so many more things involved with the day-to-day management and the psychology involved with dealing with drunk people on vacation. Now, that's the hard part. Forget about how much money it's going to make. Let's talk about, can I deal with drunk people on vacation? That is the truth, man. That's the hard part. And obviously, we're not going to buy a house that doesn't make money. But I really think that's a bigger question.
No, I totally agree. And going back to the data, all the data websites and stuff that are out there now, they are great, and they're a great resource. But again, I really feel like, if a lot of those you can zoom in on individual properties, and I don't like doing that, or I don't really encourage it, because, you zoom in on an individual property, and again, you're going back to, you're analyzing whoever's managing that before you. And there's a lot of stuff you just don't know. How many days was it available? How many days did they vacation there themselves? What was their minimum night stay? There's a million variables. Is it with a property manager, but it's still on Airbnb and it's skewed and blah, 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 blah. So I do use some of those websites. I use AirDNA a little bit, but I use a more zoomed out approach, and I look at kind of averages for the area, and then I kind of cross-reference that with my enemy methoding, just to kind of as a double check. I look at like what's a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom or 6-bedroom or whatever size I'm looking at, what's the average for that area in the percentile that I think I can perform in. And, if I got a massive difference there between what I did on enemy method, I might dig into it a little bit and I might be okay with it. It just depends on the reasons why. But that's kind of the way I use those websites, is a little more zoomed out. I don't get into the nitty gritty, really looking at every single house on the street. And this one's doing that. I want that one instead. It doesn't matter. It's a house. Like you said, you're buying a tool, you're buying a house, and it's up to you from there to how it performs. So
if it works into your system, go for it. If you're using these websites and you subscribe and you work that into your finances as an expense, and it's just part of your system, how to get to the next property, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I pay for my Rentometer subscription. I look at it twice a year. That's very expensive. That's the difference between that for long-term and short-term. These short-terms are crazy expensive, these softwares. So if it works in your system and it's helping you get to the next deal, absolutely. If it's giving you more paralysis and then you sit there and you don't make any offers.
Yeah. I've had clients literally, going back to the zoomed in method, I've had clients literally bring me houses that they want to look at, that they're interested in. On this, literally, I had one instance where there's 3 of them on the same street, same bedroom count, same square footage, same floor plan, same
gross income.
They were the same house, and there was $100,000 difference in the income on AirDNA for the 3 different houses, and it was real, and the prices were drastically different too. The asking prices were based
on it was real.
We verified that the income, so it wasn't like skewed data on AirDNA. It was actually like the 3 houses, between the 3 of them, there was $100,000 difference on income. These were big 6-bedroom houses with a pool. And the client wanted the most expensive house because it had the best rent history. And I'm like, why don't we go for the cheapest one? It's the same house. If
they were all built at the same time?
Same time. So yeah, they're all built the same year. And they were literally the same house. Just one of them was way underperforming, and it was being sold way cheaper. And I actually went
warm fuzzy out of it. It gives you a warm fuzzy.
Yeah.
And but here's the deal: if that's an apartment building, that house is worth more because it rents for more.
Right.
That apartment complex is worth more. The NOI is better. The cap rate is better because it rents for more. You're buying a business.
Right.
When it's not commercial real estate, when it's got less than four doors or less, it is not a business, and it's worth what the house next door appraises for. And then whatever you can rent it for is whatever you can rent it for. It's not related.
My point was the rent potential between all 3, in my opinion, was the same.
Exact same.
The exact same rent potential. So, if you want that house, let's get the cheapest one. Just get you the better deal, and then improve it. Make it perform like that one that's crushing it down the street.
Warm fuzzy, gives you a warm fuzzy, makes you feel like giving you a little hug. Hey, this is what this thing's gonna make this much money. But again, there's no rent roll here, folks. They're not handing you over a book of leases. They're not handing you over guaranteed income every month because it has leases and tenants and a rent roll. There's nothing guaranteed on whatever that past income is, which in most cases is good. In most cases, it's great because 9 times out of 10, you don't even want to make what that thing was making before because they were doing a crappy job, or they were third party in it, or whatever. I guess at the end of the day, if you're shot out of a cannon and you're looking around and you're saying, man, I can crush this and I can do better than this guy and better than that guy, you will. Simple as that. And if you're like kind of hem and hawing and you're sitting there staring at all these websites and signing up for a new subscription every 6 days, and then you're second guessing yourself all the time, probably a pretty good indication that maybe you're hesitating for a reason. Maybe you're not going to be that great at this. Also, we have a danger there of paying too much. I got all this data. This house, I think if I'm the best on the planet and I'm shot out of a cannon, I can push this house to this much rental income. So in my numbers, I need whatever it is, my cash on cash return, whatever you're looking for. I'm not here to tell you what that is, by the way. Let's get into that in a second. But you could tweak numbers on a spreadsheet until you're blue in the face, and then finally figure out a way to tweak yourself into this thing making money. And that's dangerous too.
Absolutely.
We're not here, the short-term memory. We're not here to tell you this is how you find a house and buy that house and feel comfortable and warm and fuzzy. That's not our job. That's not my job. That's my job within my organization. That's how I buy a house. What I do to buy a house is probably nothing even close to what you're going to do to buy a house, or Tim does, or Joe or Johnny. I'm at a different point in my career right now. I'm happy buying a $150,000 house that only makes $200 a month. When I was first started, I needed it to make 6 or 7 or 8, because I couldn't couldn't get by. I had to get to that next down payment, and I needed to throw. But now it's more about good schools on a long-term rental, and does it have a detached garage? Does it have a converted garage? Like I'm out on that. Like I have like I've buy boxes, and my boxes are going to be different than yours. My boxes are different than mine were when I first started. So we're not here to sit here and say, oh, you need to get 15% cash on cash on. I shouldn't even have said that, because now everybody's going to be like, oh, to buy, but well, I need 15% of the whatever it is, purchase price.
No, it goes back to knowing what do you need out of this for it to be a win for you.
Yes.
There's a lot of chatter about the excitement around short-term rentals and all the profits and all this and all that. You got to step back from that, and it's fine to listen to it and hear it and whatever, but you got to step back and what's a win for you? What's your investment portfolio look like today? What are your long-term goals? How long do you want to own this thing for? How long do you want? Is this a 15-year journey, or is it just something you're jumping into? Is it a hobby? Some people get into this for something to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun, and it could be both.
I've been a house husband my whole life. I'm not saying not me. I've never, but let's just say hypothetically, I've been a house husband my whole life, or a housewife my whole life. My kids are gone. My kids just went to college. Now I'm lonely. I'm bored. My husband's still working. My wife's still working, and I'm sitting at home with nothing to do except for clean up after my husband, or my wife. And this would be a perfect candidate for something like this. It gives you something to do. It's sexy. You can put it on your Facebook, and it's easy. That's not easy. That's not the right word. I shouldn't say. No, Luke never. I never said this was going to be easy. Okay, but it's something that somebody who's never worked in their life, a house husband their whole life, could sit down and figure out. Come to class with me. Call me up. I'm happy to help. Listen to the management show. And you can figure out how to do this. Again, that's just one demographic of 100 that this might.
Because most people are doing this as an investment, which is an investment is a tool that helps you grow your existing money. And at the rate that you want to do that and you're satisfied with is kind of a big factor in these numbers. If you got a job and you're making, $900,000 a year or something, you're going to have a different criteria than somebody that's making $70,000 a year and that's trying to, make it go with something better. And that's fine. There is no one, going back to the cash on cash thing, there is no one singular right answer. It's what works for you and what's good for you and what's going to make your life better, because that's all we're trying to do. That too. We're trying to make all your lives better,
Yeah.
And for real, that's we want to make your lives better. And what does that mean for you? So there is no single, like, this is right or this is wrong, or I made a bad investment. You don't want to lose money. At the end of the day, you don't want to lose money. And even that, you got to look at that, as everything, any kind of business you do is going to have cycles. There's going to be years that are better than others. So generally I like to look at real estate as a long-term investment. This is something I'm in for the long haul. So I'm ready for, some years are going to be way better than others, and that's okay. So you just got to answer those questions for yourself. And the other thing about, real estate is, like, if you buy a house and you wanted a home run and you ended up with a base hit, good. You're, at the end of the day, you're going to get a college education out of that base hit, way more than you would have out of a home run on the first shot, and that leads you to house number 2. And you start stacking up those base hits, and pretty soon you're in home run territory. So
yep, you nailed it. Ask yourself this question: would I buy this property if I had $20 million in the bank, cash? Because you never know. You might wake up one day and have, more than you ever dreamed of, because you kicked and screamed and got to where you wanted to be. And it's definitely a hypothetical. But when it comes to short-term especially, I really think you should ask yourself that. Is this something I want to be stuck with? Is this something I would buy if I had $20 million cash? Is this something I would do if I had $20 million cash in the bank? And I also don't think it's a bad idea, if you're nervous, if you're dataing yourself to death and you're sitting there with 77 spreadsheets and 16 different data websites, which I can't even believe there's that many of them. We'll talk about that. Let's move into that here in a second. But start with a long term. Start with a long term. For $150,000, just find something that like you were talking about, that you think isn't going to lose money. You know, let's not forget this is a rich man's game, guys. You know, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. Real estate is for people with money. Okay, got a bunch of extra money laying around, buy some rental real estate, or buy some stocks, or buy some mutual funds. Okay, now for whatever reason, there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get into this that don't have any money. I was one of them.
Me too.
So I was able to make it work. You know, you come from Iowa, I come from Nebraska. We're just broke Midwestern boys that made good, and I'm here to tell you it can be done. But the longer I'm in this career, this business, the more I realize this is a rich man's game. What the hell am I even doing here? Of course, I built myself into one, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. But start with a single family, 150 grand in a decent school district, a 3-2 brick ranch from the 70s or 80s, 90s, if you can find one, that'd be nice. You know, you can't go wrong. I mean, if again, here's another thing back to my rich dude, right? My rich dude, people that can afford to buy rental real estate don't generally live in an area where you can make money on rental real estate. You know, dude's living in a big metro where prices are high because that's the way he is. That's the way he rolls. He's living in a fancy area with the fancy family and the whole fancy car and the Escalade and all that. And $150,000 3-2 is probably nothing he's ever heard of. You know,
it doesn't exist there.
Doesn't exist. And it wasn't until I met my lovely wife and moved to the South that I knew that. I would come from New York City. It was $2-3 million for 500 square feet. And all the next thing I know, I'm in a town where you could buy a house for 150 grand. I'm like, what the hell? This is crazy. Still didn't know what 150 grand was, but I knew it wasn't 2 million, you know? So I went out and I started buying houses, and you might need to go somewhere that is far away from where you live. But I do highly recommend everybody start with that $150,000 long-term. But there's nothing wrong with jumping straight into short-term if you want to get that sexy meter going. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But my point is if you're analyzing yourself to death and you're like, oh my God, what if this is a mistake? Dude, you could already had 2 months worth of rent coming in on that 3-2 brick ranch in freaking Kentucky or wherever, South Carolina, Arizona, Texas, you know, that was breaking even, making a couple $100 a month, maybe if you're lucky, and you're just learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I mean, there's so many, we can go into all kinds of aspect of managing, but you know, a lot of it comes down to people. You know, you have to learn how to work with people too. I mean, whether you're doing long-term or short-term, you're dealing with people a lot in this business.
So many personalities.
You know, and it's not just, you know, everybody thinks, oh, you got to learn how to deal with your tenants or your guests. And that's like, I'll say the easy part. You know, I mean, you also have to learn how to talk to bankers, and you got to learn how to talk to the contractors. You know, you have to talk to the guy giving you $1 million for the short-term rental, the same day you got to talk to the guy pumping your septic tank. And you got to, it's 2 different languages. I mean, you literally have to learn the different languages, you know, so there's a lot that goes into this, but that's a life skill, I think, you know, learning how to work with people. And you know, to your point, I guess, and I'm rambling on there, but it doesn't matter on that aspect if you're doing a $150,000 3-2 or $1 million vacation house. You know, it's the same languages you got to learn, you know. So,
you know, I was just thinking to myself, maybe we should bear with me on this one. It's going to go a couple different ways. Maybe we should put together a chart of all these websites that do data, and this one or do a podcast on that. This one it does this well. This one does that well. There's so many of them out there. I don't even run AirDNA. Obviously, is the biggest one, but I don't want to drop any names. We could put a chart together of all these. I don't know. There's got to be 10 of them out there now, and say this one's good at this. This one's good at that. Now the downside, again, this is what drives me. You know, part of my frustration is that these things are freaking expensive. You know, I don't know how much is an AirDNA subscription right now. I mean, it's any idea?
I don't even know. It's been,
I don't either.
It's been a few years. I did buy it. I mean, I'm gonna say probably in the hundreds of dollars a month. Some
for one market.
Yeah, for one market.
Yeah. So if you want to go to another market, next thing you know, you're spending $1,000 a month.
Yeah, and I did a little bit of that in the beginning, but then, you know, as again, experience kind of takes over, and you know, I don't want to sit here and pretend like you're going to have experience when you first start, because you don't. That's why it's scary.
So anyway, we can put this chart together that says this one costs this much, this one costs that. Maybe it's already out there. It's probably already out there. There's everything out there, right? I'm the short-term rental data website guy. You know, so
the data guy, data guy.
I'm the data guy. Yeah, exactly. I analyze the data analyzers. I'm sure that probably exists. But what I don't want to do, I'm thinking like, well, we could do that and give it to people. But guess what that is? It's just one more thing to drive you nuts. So then I got to sit here and analyze the analyzers and spend 20 hours figuring out which one's the best for me. Like it's I don't know, like a family car. I got to have a Ford versus a Chevy. It all goes back. Now we're talking, and this is going to speak your language. We talk about this all the time. Book suggestion of the call number one is paradox of choice. Paradox of choice. Absolute game-changing, life-changing book for yours truly. I'm going to Google. Do you know the author? I'm going to Google it.
I don't off the top of my head, but
I don't either. I'm pretty bad with authors.
I'm horrible with authors.
Barry Schwartz, 2004. Thank you so much. You've changed my life. I'm a massive maximizer. I used to be that guy, not necessarily with data, because when I first started this, data didn't exist. It was enemy method or nothing, and I was just the first person to name it, and it happened to be a clever name, so it stuck. But anyway, where was I? So yeah, paradox of choice. There's maximizers and there's satisfizers. Read the book, please. Don't just skim over this. If you're listening to this call, please go read that book. I used to be. I'm in whatever. I'm a reformed maximizer, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I married the biggest satisfizer. I don't even think it's a real word, but it is the word from the book, satisfizer, on the planet. Avery makes decisions having not even realized she made it. There's no decision. Like it's just like, this is how it is. Move on. I don't even want to think about it. Like it's crazy.
Her brain is satisfied.
She's satisfied. It's crazy. I don't know how she does it. She doesn't even want to think about making a decision. Like it doesn't even exist. Me, I'm over here. Used to be. I'm reformed. With I'm buying a bumper for the Jeep, and I'll sit there and I'll spend 17 hours on each Jeep website. Going crazy, and that's just a Jeep bumper. When it comes to a house that's $800,000, imagine how crazy you can drive yourself. So really what we're talking about here is turning yourself from a maximizer that goes nuts and analyzes all this crap and never gets anywhere and just spins wheels all the time into a satisfizer. Now there's a downside of being a satisfizer occasionally. As a matter of fact, back to the Jeep thing, I this is a real example. Recently bought a new bumper for the new Jeep, and then I got the Jeep, and I'm like, I looked at it, and the guy just sent me, here, pick one of these, and I picked the most expensive one, and it was not much. It was like, I don't know, cheap for a Jeep bumper. And I went and picked up the Jeep, and I'm like, this bumper's a piece of crap, So then it bit me in the ass. But again, that's the maximizer in me coming back out. So anyway, if you're having trouble with this, if you're having trouble with all this data, read that book. I can guarantee.
Absolutely, read that book. Read that book, right? If you're not having trouble with the data, because that means you're on the other side of it.
Were you a maximizer?
Yeah, for sure.
And are you better at it now, or?
I'm better at it now. It still comes out. Again, it depends on what it is a little bit. If it's something I have any level of interest in, I slip down that slope. I said become an expert, and that's kind of a little bit of my worst enemy. Is I like anything I get interested in, I want to become an expert at it, and that can suck up way too much time. But at the same time, there's a healthy balance to all that. I think if it's something you enjoy, then go for it. Just don't put yourself in the loony bin. So yes, I would say I'm on the I'm on the reforming and awareness side of the maximizer. I catch
what it was for me. I needed to be aware that this existed. I had no idea I was even doing it.
Right.
And Avery didn't know, she, we knew that we were different in that aspect, like personality wise or whatever. It's probably what attracted us to each other was one of the things, is that we were opposites in that category, and not opposites in rock and roll. But, and I see it in my daughter, we have kids now, and I see my daughter doing it all the time. She maximizes the crap out of everything. And I feel bad when she does it, because I know it came from me. It didn't come from Avery. And I tell her, I'm like, Max, her name is Max. You're maximizing. And she's 4. So she's like, no, I'm not. She doesn't even know what it is, obviously, but I can't wait for her to read that book someday. And I hope that she cares,
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this, all this personality stuff. There's a blessing and curse to both sides of it. I think all of it is just the awareness level, and learning a little bit about basic psychology and stuff goes a long way, and reading books get you there. And, the obsessiveness, there's no doubt the obsessiveness in my life is somewhat to credit to what got me, where I am. but also it's been there's times where it's definitely a curse. I've gotten paralyzed by myself before, and I've gotten paralyzed analyzing properties before, and I've quite frankly backed out of properties in my early days that I would kill to own today. And but that's part of the journey, and you just gotta, hopefully listening to us can help you along your own journey there a little bit.
Yes, and let me point out one more thing. How much money are all these data websites making? It's a whole business. It's a revenue stream. You know what I mean? They're expensive.
Right. They're not going to be there for you once you buy the property.
Right.
They're not going to do anything for you. There's nothing that they are going to do to help you get to the number that you put down on your spreadsheet to make you happy. That's on you, and we are here to help you with that. But at the end of the day, it's learning how you're learning a skill here. So,
dude, 100%. And now you got these guys. Back to the hold on.
I love it when I rattle your brain,
dude. I have to write this stuff down or I forget. So, these websites, there's tons of them now, and I have to believe that the prices are going to start going down. You're either going to start seeing some of them disappear because there's so many of them now, these data websites for short term, or the prices are going to go down. I think that's, there's going to be a happy medium right now. But right now, everybody's got imposter syndrome. Everybody's, trying to be first to the game, right? Like the first to the table with this data. And they already did it, man. That company's already been traded, at least once. And I think that the imposter syndrome is going to start settling in, which I've been guilty of many times. Every time you switch careers or whatever, you're an imposter and you try harder at that point to try and make yourself known. And I think that's what a lot of these guys are doing, these places are doing. But I think it's just going to drive the prices down and make it good, for the consumer. And at a certain point, again, this is what drives me nuts about it. You're spending $1,000 a month on one website to tell you how much a house rents for when you could get that for free. Now, if I was only paying $99 a month, for the entire country, I don't know how much they cost. Let me put that out there. I'm sure there's some dude that owns one of these that's like, dude, you don't even know what we do. But my point is if you're spending a ton of money on this, you could have thrown that money back in the pot for the down payment for a couch, and eventually the imposter syndrome thing will go away.
The other thing too is, again, we're not really talking about seasoned people here, but once you own one or two of these things, your days of looking at that stuff are almost gone. Because you kind of get a feel of it, and so all that stuff and all those hours, and you're going to forget about it, in a couple of years, and or even less than that, a couple months maybe. I remember. My first one, I can't lie. I need to dig it up, because before I came and worked with you guys, in my early days of jumping into this, I did on notebooks too, and I had a notebook. I had pages of numbers written out. Well, if and then and da 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 da. And then I bought one, and then I don't even know where that notebook is anymore, because I never looked at it again. And so anyway,
you almost don't want to look at it, because you'll be like, oh man,
yeah, what was
why was I so obsessed over that? Now that being said, you make some good points there for maximizing, and if you don't go through some of that, and this is the reformed maximizer in me is in pain right now, but if you don't go through some of this stuff and drive yourself nuts, then, by the time you'll never get to the third or fourth property when it's time to forget, all the driving yourself nuts, right. So that's, there is an argument on that side of it to just go ahead and do the driving yourself nuts, to get
again, balance. There's such a balance in all of this. I guess, going back to the software data companies and stuff, a big thing to be aware of on some of that too is, like, where are they getting that? Where are they getting their data from?
Airbnb.
Well, I know, and that's the point, I guess.
Same thing you can do.
They all get the data from the same place. They're not doing anything magical. And the difference between some of these is interface, and what it looks like, and it's pretty or it's not pretty, or it sorts it out for you in a way that may work better for your brain. And to that degree, there's some validity to it. They're not evil. They're not evil.
No.
It's just like you said, you can do it all yourself for free. That's true. You may not be able to too right today.
Well, you can do your own brain surgery for free. That's probably not a good idea.
Right.
There's arguments.
So I guess I'm just being devil's advocate.
I don't want to
sit
here and sound like we're poo-pooing on all these softwares, But what I am poo-pooing on is the driving yourself. Go ahead.
No, exactly what you said. It's a little bit of balance. You got to find the balance that works, and you gotta come to a reality that just because someone other than you told you something, no matter, at the end of the day, it's up to you to make it come real. And that's where the confidence level has to come in. At the end of the day, the question you got to ask yourself is, what do I feel confident I can do in this house? And that's the number. Uh, and if you're being too conservative, I hate to say it, you're probably not going to end up with a house, because you're always going to be able to talk yourself out of it. And if there's 20 people around you on the same block that you're looking at that's buying houses left and right, and they're making money, and you're talking yourself out of it and saying, I can't make any money, you got to ask yourself why. And that's where you got to get real with yourself and say, look, I might be wrong. Maybe I'm being too conservative. On the other note, if you're, on the other side of that, if you're, saying I can pay this much, and it's 250 grand more than anybody else is paying, because your number, you better look at that too. So again, it just kind of comes back to look around you, and that's the enemy method. We keep going back to that. Look around you, become an expert in your neighborhood, your area, your region, whatever it is that you need, that needs to work. You need to look at that.
So, I don't make money off the enemy method. I just gave it a name. I didn't even create it. It was already out there. I was just smart. I just was the first one to put a name on it. And but anyway, you talk about these these websites not being there for you once you actually own the house. And it goes a step further than that, because we see these folks popping up now that you can go and pay to analyze your property for you. And I think that's dangerous, man. I really do. Because that person's got no skin in the game. So, if they're wrong, they can just disappear. What are they, you can't do anything about it. Hey, you should go buy this house with your money and your leverage and your family's life on the lines. I think you should buy this one. I mean, first of all, why would I want that gig? That sounds like a pressure gig that I would not want, but there's people out there doing it. And I think I would advise folks to stay away from that. That guy's got no skin in the game. I don't know how.
Well, the other thing to that is you're not growing yourself, in that, and again, at the end of the day, this is your small business. I mean, if I'm getting into a new lifestyle of running this small business called short-term rental, you better want to grow yourself into learning these things, and because that's the people that become successful. I mean, the people that know, it goes back to anything. I mean, when you put in the sweat in the beginning, at the end, 10 years from now, you may not need to be the one doing that stuff, or even a year from now, you may not need to be doing that, but you need to understand how it works.
If you want to hire a guru or somebody to help you learn how to do this stuff, that's fine. But if you're just going to pay somebody $200 to tell you how much a property is going to make, I think that's a little dangerous, man. I mean,
completely agree.
Because that person's probably not even in the town that you're looking to buy or anything like that. And it's just, I just hope we don't get more of that out there, because I think it's a little dangerous. But what else? Anything else that we didn't cover?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, 100 things, I would imagine. Good book you've read recently?
I actually just started in on Courage is Calling.
Oh, Ryan Holiday.
Yep. So I'm just getting started in that one. So seems good so far.
Okay, great. Yeah.
What about you?
I'm still reading Getting the Love You Want, which is nothing to do with real estate, but it is fantastic. I found out actually that it is I think it's the first Oprah Book Club book. Kind of put that on the map. It's a vintage classic in the world of being a good dad, being a good husband, father, family man. So yeah, nothing to do with real estate, but what else?
But everything to do with important stuff.
I actually have Discipline is Destiny queued up next, which is Ryan Holiday's other. I think he's put out 2 in the last year. And Ryan Holiday's a metalhead, so of course we like him very much. But all right, man, data. Don't drive yourself nuts with it, guys. Don't drive. That's the whole point.
Don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it. That's it. Long story short, short-term rental management. Don't overthink it.